All right, what's up, everyone? I wanted to get on here and talk about some of the statistics that I gave the guys in the Zoom webinar earlier today. And, some of this revolves around, a little bit of the issue with COVID, but I just, I can't really believe how much worse these numbers have gotten in the last 10 years. I was working with a company called Metabolic RX Therapy, in 2008, 2009, when I was with Hurdle and Brown back in Erie. And so we were working on trying to integrate this idea of the physio gym at that time, where we were doing wellness and fitness, in the physical therapy clinic. So we ended up outsourcing some of this stuff to another company. And so at that time, I was getting really big into the statistics. And as I moved back to Pittsburgh and Cranberry, I was doing these talks and going around and talking about wellness and fitness and health, and ACL injury prevention was another one. And as I went back in a couple of months ago to redo some of these slides and look at the numbers, I couldn't believe it, but I could. Right? So, basically they've been talking about this for 50, 60 years right now, about how, unhealthy we are becoming as a society. And I think with COVID right now, we're starting to see that. And very few people are really talking about that. And it's something that I've always talked about. And I've really, up until this point, until right now, I've been feeling kind of uncomfortable talking about, because it's been such a grave nature and people are experiencing such misery. But, if you look at across the board right now, COVID is primarily picking off and killing and being the cause of death for all of these people that had all of these chronic diseases and you know comorbidities and pre-existing type of conditions with chronic diseases. And people don't realize what's going on in this country right now, right? Why is this such a big devastating issue? Well, that's kind of the numbers I'm going to give you here. One of the things I had been joking around about and talked about it with these groups that I'm doing right now, is this idea of us being really in a zombie apocalypse right now. We've been in this scenario where we have the Walking Dead walking around right now, and I have family that have these issues just like everybody else. And it's really sad when we look at it, but our society and our culture has really created it. And one of my first aha moments started with this. I was back in 2008, 2009, we're having a roundtable discussion about some patients, and the one PT says, well, I don't know what's going on. She had her hip replaced. She's not, progressing as well as I would think. And I don't really understand what's going on. It doesn't really make any sense. She only has diabetes. And I looked at him, especially me, and I was like, what? She only has diabetes? I mean, diabetes is like one of the worst conditions that you can get. It seems very benign, and we also see a ton of it, in the PT clinic, so you kind of get used to it. But that shows you, right, that we're really getting used to seeing, so many people with diabetes that it gets expected to be the norm. So then another time I'm driving back to Erie, Pennsylvania, for a golf outing or something along those lines, and I pull into the Mill Creek Mall, right, which is the big mall in Erie that basically everybody from the whole region has to come to, because there's not very many other malls, and it's a nice mall, right? And when you pull in, you end up going right past a series of these restaurants, and there used to be a Red Lobster, and if you guys remember, Ponderosa Steakhouse was there. I don't remember what was there at any other time. There's a Starbucks on the other side, a Cold Stone Creamery, right? Nice little place. So this is probably somewhere 2013, 2014. I'm driving back to Erie for this event, maybe a wedding or whatever. I needed to pick up a pair of socks or something. I remember I was going to the Men's Warehouse, right? So I pull in, and basically, right next to the Red Lobster, where this steakhouse used to be, is a DaVita dialysis clinic. And I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? We're going to put a DaVita dialysis clinic right in the main entrance of the mall? Like, where are we? Is this, clown world? What is going on right now? Has this stuff really fully manifested to the point that we're so used to it that we're not even going to bat an eye? And I just couldn't believe it, but it's the truth, right? And so, when you look at our healthcare, expenditures right now, it's about $3.5 trillion a year that we spend in healthcare spending in the United States. And 90% of it is from chronic disease and mental illness. Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, it's genetic. Well, you can look this up. Most diagnoses that have a purely genetic component are less than 5% of all medical diagnoses. Right? So we know about 70% of this is chronic and preventable. $3.5 trillion, right? one of the statistics though coming back from the, where does this start? Well, in the 1960s they did some studies, and they've continued to do them on just looking at height and weight for people. And you got BMI arguments and body composition in general, but athletes here, calm down. We're talking about the entire population, right? This isn't bodybuilders and everybody. This is America here, right? So in the 60s, basically the average man was about 5'8" and 160 pounds, 165 pounds, and the average woman was about 5'2" and 130 pounds, 135 pounds, right? So now in the year 2020, we're about 1 inch taller for both men and women, and we're about 30 pounds heavier. So the average man is about 5'9" and 197 to 200 pounds, and the average woman is 5'3" and 170 pounds, right? Which is unbelievable, to think about that. Even worse, when we look at basically morbidity, and chronic disease, what you're going to die from and diseases that you're going to get, the number one risk factor that we see is what's called hip to waist ratio, right? How big is your waist relative to your hips, right? So in the bigger that your waist gets relative to it's waist to hip ratio, excuse me, I said hip to waist to hip ratio, right? So the larger that your waist becomes relative to the size of your hips, the bigger your gut is relative to your butt, then you're basically going to start seeing more risk for, chronic disease type of things like heart disease and diabetes. Well, in the United States, the average male in this country right now has a 40-inch waist, and the average female has a 39-inch waist. And these are stats from the CDC, right? So this comes back to obesity as well, right? And obesity costs us about $1,500 more a month on healthcare for each one of those individuals, right? And this was the kicker coming back to COVID and all of this stuff. Right now in this country, about 40% of all adults have at least 2 diagnosed chronic diseases, right? And then if you're over 55, you're up to 47%, right? And if you're over 55, there's a 20% likelihood that you have 3 chronic diseases, right? Unbelievable, right? And then there was another interesting statistic here that showed that 59% of adults report no vigorous physical activity in the last 6 months. Unbelievable, right? And so I could go on and on about these statistics, but we gotta try to make some changes here. And we got to see the difference. And I'm hoping that, through this, this situation, that it's creating a catalyst for people to get control of their lives and start becoming a healthier version of themselves and be advocates. If you're a physical therapist or a healthcare professional, and that was why I was talking about, these statistics on this slide, is that this is a big issue and it's not normal. And we need to be advocates for people and keep pushing people in the right direction. And I know it's not easy. We have to be the leaders behind this thing. And this is one of the things that got me passionate about all this stuff in the beginning, and here I am again. I'm feeling just as much as passionate as I was for this, as I was 10 years ago, looking at this data. Right. All right. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you guys following along. Talk to you later.